Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Dave Kimura.
Hey, everyone.
We have a new rogue, and that's John Epperson. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm John Epperson. I've been in the Ruby and Rails community for about 12, working on my 13th year now. I've always pretty much worked on these large ERP type projects throughout my whole career, done a lot of DevOps work, author of ShipLane. That's actually what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, which is more of a DevOps-y type tool. And that's always been a huge interest of mine. So that's me.
Nice. I'm Charles Max Wood. We are working on getting the Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job in audiobook form out. So if it's early January, go look on Audible, because that's where I'm going to be posting it. If you can't find it, then go look on Twitter and bother me, and I'll let you know when it's going to be out there. We have a special guest, and that is Mithun Dhar. I hope I said that right.
Yes, you absolutely did. Thanks so much. Hey, everyone. My name is Mithun Dhar. I lead developer relations at Here Technologies. Although developer relations is sort of a given and quite common these days, back when I started 20 years ago while I was at Microsoft Research, this was sort of an appendage to a job that I had. And I think we have come a long way where, developer evangelism, advocacy, and developer relations has sort of become mainstream. And I work at Here Technologies, where we are building location services and location platforms that's powering a lot of different things, from your delivery, food delivery applications to your ride-sharing applications to, some of the drones that you might have, and every single package that gets delivered to you from Amazon. We are the services powering behind in the back end. I'm excited to be talking to Charles and all of you.
I love you guys then, because all that nice stuff shows up on my porch. Awesome.
Before it then gets stolen by somebody else?
Yeah, we have a Ring doorbell so we can at least see their face when they do it.
So you can see the crime happening.
That's right. And so the Google can spy on my neighbors.
Which I was going to say, that opens a new can of worms.
Yeah. No, let's not go there. Yeah, some of that stuff's pretty scary. This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give you full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code DevChat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code DevChat at Sentry.io. So we're talking about location services, and I remember back in the day when I had like a TomTom appliance that, I stuck in my car and plugged into the little, they're outlets now. They used to be the cigarette lighters that were built into the cars, but nobody uses them for that anymore. But yeah, so you'd plug it in and it would update things. And then you had to like plug it into your computer to run the updates. And anymore, I mean, it's easier to built into the car, right? Or it's on your phone. And just to give a little bit more background, I worked for a company called Public Engines, and their front end stuff was crimereports.com. They're not around anymore, but I did a lot of the geocoding and geofencing work for them. And
wow. Okay.
And this was like 8-9 years ago. So it's been a while, and I've played with it since then, but it's always interesting to see where this has gone, especially at this point, since I kind of carry my location stuff in my pocket, in my phone. Yes. And I don't think about it when I need to navigate to somewhere, or I don't think about it when like Grubhub or
Uber Eats
or whatever shows up at my house, right? They just know where to go. And all this stuff is kind of automatic, same thing with like Uber and Lyft. So do you want to just talk a little bit about how we need to be thinking about location now? Because the way that we thought about it before was, where is this point on the map and how do I show people that? And now it's, how do I help people live their lives so that they know where they are and where they're going?
Amazing stuff has happened in the last 20, 25 years or so, especially in the location space. And the beauty about this technology is it's so seamlessly integrated and gone into the background that, we take it for granted. Like some of the things that you were talking about, Charles, like, when a package gets delivered to your porch, or when your food comes and shows up, you don't think about all the complexity that went behind. You just think that, oh, it's an app that restaurants and consumers just use to automatically deliver food whenever you want it. But I think once you start peeling the layers, you'll start seeing how complex it is. Just a anecdote. All the way. My first use was pre-GPS. I think it was circa 2001 or 2002. Microsoft had this product, I don't know if any of you remember, called Microsoft Street Maps or Microsoft Streets. It was this early version before a GPS was prevalent, where you had this small device and a CD that came that you could load it up, and this device was actually getting the GPS coordinates real time, and it would show you where you're on the map. And I used that for a road trip back in the day. I'm sure I have a few pictures. I'll send it to you later. But we drove from Seattle to California, and I was awestruck because this was tracking my car in real time. This was showing we never got lost. And that was such a luxury back then, right? Like otherwise you had to pull up in a gas station or something, open up this big weird map and try to figure out which is north, which is south, and then navigate. Fast forward a generation today, and my kids, or even some of the younger kids these days, don't know what it is to be lost. No matter which part of the world you're in, you know where you are. That where you are, that location piece is so ubiquitous now, and a whole industry has spawned around it. And these services, like all the location services, the ones that you were mentioning, geocoding, geofencing, we were talking about that earlier. All of these have become so ubiquitous and so easy to use that is present in all the applications. I'll just talk about the complexity, right? Like when you fire up your Uber app, the first thing that your Uber app wants to know is where you are, right? And once it identifies that, it wants to know how many people are in and around your vicinity, first in a minute, within a minute, within 3 minutes, within 5 minutes, because that's how long you're willing to wait for the cab to come. Once that is identified, both the driver and the passenger are notified. And then when the passenger or when the driver says, yes, I want to pick up this passenger, the route guidance starts. And when the route guidance starts, that is a location service. Then you get an ETA that your Uber will arrive in 3 or 5 minutes. That ETA is a service. And the whole traffic update along the way, that is another location service. Once he or she comes to you in the Uber, you board in and you put and when the driver accepts from that point, a new address comes in. That address lookup is a service. From there, when you start navigating again, you get an ETA saying this is where you'll be, and any traffic incidents along the way, you'll get notified. All of those are services. So just in this small scenario, if none of these location services were there, which again became ubiquitous in the last 5 to 7 years and have been in development for the last 15 or so years, we wouldn't have an Uber, we wouldn't have Deliveroo, we wouldn't know where our packages are or how many stops away they are from. We wouldn't know the weather in different locations at different zip codes and so on and so forth. So the point that I want to emphasize is, we use location on a everyday, almost every moment basis, but it is so seamlessly integrated. That is the beauty of location services, that we don't have to particularly pay attention, but it is always there.
And then you have useless cases of GPS with Pokemon Go.
Sorry. Define useless. I'm a little offended, Dave.
Too bad.
My Charizard's going to come over there and kick your butt. Okay, how do I use this, right? How do I know that my app needs it? And then how do I use it so that I can make people's lives more convenient or better, or how, whatever measure I'm using to say, this has value for me, having somebody's location?
Look, I think like I was saying earlier, Chuck, like there's location seamlessly integrated into all aspects of our life, from everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. Hey Alexa, how long will it take for me to go to my office? Hey, what does the traffic situation look like? And some of the cars that have the newer navigation system are actually keeping us very safe with self-healing maps built in. Let's say there was an oil spill somewhere along the freeway or there was a major accident, then your maps are automatically trying to fix that.
Reroute you around it.
Reroute you and take you, reroute you and take you through a much safer way and help you get to your destination in a much easier way. When a package is getting delivered, for the FedEx driver, UPS driver, whoever that delivery service is, it automatically gets you to the building and shows where the entry points and exit points are. For self-driving cars, we have what we call as HD maps, which are centimeter level accuracy, 10 centimeters or less. Because think about it, right? Like some of the general mapping services that you use have a 20 to 40 feet accuracy. But 20 to 40 feet in a self-driving car could mean life or death, meaning you're stopping at the middle of the intersection or you're stopping just before the intersection at the door or the gate of that building. So we have now developed, centimeter level accuracy maps that are being used in conjunction with LiDAR and all the other technologies that's propelling autonomous driving cars that will improve the lives of people. Think about maps for drones, right? Your maps for drones don't care about your aerial networks, but it cares about how tall buildings are, where a drone parking is available, how tall is your tree, and how tall is the tree in front of your porch going to be in a year from now, because the drone has to make its way and put that package on your porch. So these are some of the things, that all cutting edge technology that we are working on that's going to propel and make people's lives so much better.
Yeah, I guess what I'm aiming at is I'm going to caveat my example by saying that it's a terrible, terrible idea, but it gives us kind of an entry point to talk about this. But let's say that I build a podcast listening app, and what it does is it shows podcasters where people are listening to their shows, right? So it has the location service built in. And so it shows, a lot of people are listening driving down the freeway in Atlanta, and a lot of other people are driving, through some back roads in the middle of Wyoming listening, and their phone's pinging and it's listening to my podcast. So I'm seeing that they listen to it there. How would I start building something like that in? And just, again, give the caveat. I think it's a terrible violation of people's privacy. They should be able to listen where they want. But just for the sake of argument, right? How would I build something like that and take advantage of location services there?
Yeah, absolutely. There are specific APIs that gives you, let's say you have a podcast app that is installed on somebody's phone. You could use some of our services, our positioning API, for example. Our positioning API will give you the details about where, based on cell phone tower and Wi-Fi signals, it'll tell you where your app is being used. And based on that, you could tailor the content. Let's say this is being, this app is being installed in Russia, for example. And if you have Russian-speaking podcast languages, then you could enhance this experience for your user based on the location that they are in and give them more relevant and more contextual applications. And that way, you'll be providing more value-added service for your developers. And how easy is this to use? In less than 30 seconds, you can create an account on developer.here.com, and get started to use our positioning API, which is basically a REST call, and you embed that in your application. If you think about the world and trust the world, your app can be more contextual, more tailored to the user, and frankly improves the overall satisfaction and of the service that you're offering for your user, because you've helped them make it better without asking a bunch of questions, asking them to select this and that, so on and so forth.
Right. The other question I have, this comes more from my work experience, building the location-based stuff, where we were working with crime data and things like that is, we just installed like PostGIS on a database, and then we managed a lot of the geolocation arithmetic and work ourselves. So at what point are you going to be wanting to look for a service like here? And at what point can you just kind of fudge it with a database that you manage on your own?
That is a fantastic question. And that goes to the extent of the offering that we have. Unlike most other companies, our entire business is built on location services. and our location platform, right? So we have a studio that allows you to bring location data, massage the location data, and basically manage the entire data, all your location data, and then expose that data as a service, or even view that data on a map in a very seamless way. If you today go to developer.here.com and sign up for our XYZ application, that is what I'm talking about. On another hand, let's say you have terabytes and terabytes of data, which is usually the case for most geospatial data, because there is an abundance, but there is also not a lot of tools or a lot of big data aspect to it, where people are just overwhelmed to not even know where to get started. This is where our open location platform runtime comes into picture, where you can take this big data, analyze it, and get insights on top of this. You can build pipelines, and then using a pipeline, you can build your own service, merge it with our data, your data, customize this own data, and then publish that service and even monetize if you so wish to through our marketplace.
And if you are developing with geolocation, just keep in mind that there are two different types. You have active and passive. If you're doing active geolocation, then that means when you launch your application, it's going to try to get your location, and it might track it every few seconds while you have the app in the forefront. Passive is when it's still tracking it in the background, something like a mapping software or directions. And doing passive tracking, I think, is not only potentially kind of falling on that side of, do you really need to be doing this? But it also just kills the battery of the device.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And again, as a good application developer, I'm hoping that people would take note of some of this and not use it extensively. And also, there is a cost to it, right? Like if you're constantly polling, it constantly goes as a service. So while you get 250,000 service calls for free through the Here platform, which is the best in the industry right now, there is a cost associated if you constantly poll your applications all the time. That eventually needs to be borne by the application developer.
Yeah. And I think, back to the original question that I was asking, where we were mapping crime data, right? And it was, did it happen within this shape that people had given us? We got by fine using PostGIS, right? We could do a little bit of arithmetic and it would just work. And so for kind of the smaller use cases where you're getting a collection of data points, you're doing a little bit of math on it, and you're working off of that to maybe get latitude, longitude, and drop it on Google Maps, I don't think you need a service like Here. But if you're going to do something that is more involved, where it's, like you're saying, with clearances and building heights, and, we need down to the centimeter accuracy, or I need wider mapping or streets or things like that, you have data that I'm not going to get from a PostGIS, right? And I don't have the capacity to send cars driving around with LiDAR to figure out, okay, the building shape like this. And so in those cases, it makes a lot more sense to go with a service like yours, because you're just going to have that all out of the box. And so then I can just say, okay, what am I driving through and what aspects of this do I actually care about? Where in the other case, I'm just putting points on a map and I can do that on my own.
Yeah, even to that first scenario, we have that data as well, right? So you have a bunch of addresses and you want the lat long for those addresses. Hey, use our geocoder. We are cheaper, we are faster, we are better, and we have more tools that can allow you to build around your use case in a more efficient way. Or you have lat longs and you need an address for that. We have a reverse geocoder, which will look up, or you want to say, like, wherever the crime happened, what are some of the places in and around that had a gun shop? We have that places. If you think about a map, each of these, you have a base map, and then you have addresses as one layer. You have the lat long as another layer. You have places as another layer. You have temperature as another layer. So each of these layers are nothing but attributes. And our maps have over, 800 attributes for every square inch on this planet that we have laid out.
I think my point, though, is if you need those databases, use Here. If you don't, then
you don't. We have just plain services as well. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I tried downloading OpenStreetMaps to host on my own environment to just make API calls out to. Yeah. And unless if you have like gigabytes of RAM, terabytes of storage. Don't try it.
Don't try this at home.
Yes, OpenStreetMaps is also a popular choice amongst developers and others. Where we come in as we are enterprise grade maps. We come with SLAs. We keep the freshest data in the whole world. Our analysts have put us ahead of Google Maps consistently in the past 2 years, saying we have the best location platform in the world right now, and also why a lot of Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 companies use us.
So I was just going to ask. It sounds like probably the primary way that I would use your service, right, is you have an API out there. Are there other ways that I would be using it? If I had, for example, a little device or something, would I use your services a little bit differently? Or am I always pinging your APIs?
At the end of the day, it depends on the scenario, right? We have content, we have APIs and services, we have products that will help you design and visualize your maps and customize your maps. So yeah, it depends on the scenario, I guess. Let's say you have a small IoT device that's a tracking device, and you want to know the location of this. In that case, you're using a combination of our APIs and services and also products that'll sort of show you where on the map it is. And then you could potentially, even visualize that on a map, then customize the map and publish the map. So yeah, you could use APIs, you could use our shrink wrap products, you could use some of our other tools. So it depends largely on the scenario, John.
No problem. That's exactly what I was going for.
One question around, and I know this is probably just due to poor development, but how does a company like Apple get Apple Maps so wrong the first go around? Where, things are just absolutely horribly inaccurate.
I love this question.
The way I always say is, look, we've been in the mapping business for 25 years, or a little over 25 years now. And it is not an easy problem to solve, as Apple has demonstrated in the past and in some ways continues to demonstrate. Mapping is a really, really hard problem to solve. And if a company that has literally unlimited amount of resources and money is struggling, it shows you the complexity that is involved in getting maps right. Look, I'm not at Apple, but I know where some of the shortcomings are. It is an insanely complex task that has a high degree of automation and a high degree of reliance on actual people looking at at a centimeter level at every single road, 6.8 million miles of road that is driven on a day-to-day basis. And then, we are fixing patch by patch, day by day. We have over 4,000 people in our Mumbai offices looking at this in 3 shifts every single day to keep the information accurate and actually say that, oh, that lane is a left-only lane, or this is a right-only lane. Oh, here's a U-turn that's permitted. Oh, this is the road sign. And, things are improving with automation. Things are improving with devices and sensors that are being mounted on cars, which capture road signs, etc. But still, there's a high degree of human intervention that goes on as well. But again, I want to close it with the point that I brought up earlier, that mapping is a very, very complex and hard task. And, that shows to where we are. Did that give you a little sense, Dave?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how it ever even passed QA.
No comments on that.
My understanding is that it worked great in and around Cupertino.
In their defense, first of all, I do not have, I have a MacBook, but otherwise I don't have Apple products. But in their defense, they're supposedly making it better all the time. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily trying to fanboy here, but I think we all sometimes totally fail and stumble over ourselves. I have during my career.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Me too. It just doesn't get national attention.
That's fair.
The other thing, though, is if Google Maps hadn't been out and hadn't been, so much nicer at the time, then it would have been a different story, right? It would have been, well, sometimes it's a little bit wonky, but it's still so nice. But because we had something to compare it to, it didn't help it.
But
yeah, both services are doing a lot, they do a lot better now. So
yeah, and to also on that note say Google services also had a leg up of 15 years, I think, before Apple Maps launched. So,
So true. And Apple also totally made it worse by taking Google Maps off the store during that time.
Oh, I didn't.
If I recall correctly, I had an Apple phone during that time. And I just remember I couldn't have Google Maps for a little while.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I think they have since come around. Like on CarPlay, you can now have Google Maps or the Waze app on your CarPlay. Before, and for a while, it was only Apple Maps.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah, they've also fixed it depending on the app you're in, where if you tap anything that is a location that gets tagged as a location, it used to automatically always open it in Apple. It's funny because I don't know why some apps but not others, but some apps it'll give you the option of picking Google or Apple. And other apps it's just like Apple.
I see. I have a feeling, in the programming interface somewhere by default, when somebody makes a call, it opens up Apple Maps because you're using iOS. I'm guessing. I don't know. I've not used it. But developers, I'm guessing, have an option to give any other mapping software that's installed on the phone to be, uncommented or in the code so that it becomes live or use the other option. I'm guessing that might be it. But look, I mean, I have not used Apple Maps or Google Maps. I use Here Maps. So yeah, some of these experiences are not native to me.
And some of my experiences with just the geolocation is creating a geofencing. So many years ago, I created a web application and a mobile application using RubyMotion for the mobile side, which would track a user's location for a company, and that employee would be able to clock in and clock out. But you could set perimeters so they could only do it within a certain area. So you can adjust it so they can only clock in at the work locations. So that prevented people from clocking in as they are driving to work and all that stuff. That was one good use case. And I was actually able to really just do it by tracking the location of the phone. So it was doing active tracking. So only while you had the app open. And once they were to clock in, it just sent the geo coordinates to the server. The server would then look at the list of databases that that company has set up. It would find their closest matching. And if it was within a certain percentage or a certain distance, then it would automatically allocate their time to that location or to that job costing. So that was one fun way to do it with only using the GPS device within the phone and then just having a list of coordinates on my database. And you can do some fancy formulas to calculate the distance on the sphere.
Yeah, great point, Dave. The use cases, as you mentioned, are unlimited, right? And unfathomable because there's so much you could do with it. Simple example, right? If you have Amazon app installed and if you're a Prime customer, once a delivery truck comes in the vicinity, I think it's 5 miles, 2 miles, whatever that number is, you get a notification saying, hey, your package is 6 stops away, 7 stops away, so on and so forth. Meaning that, in the 2 mile radius, there are 5 more stops or 6 more stops that they have to do before it gets to you. That's another example of how geofencing sort of adds value to you. If you have Nest at home, it's a simple toggle switch. Hey, if my phone is present, turn the camera off. If my phone is not present, turn the camera on. That's another value-added service. So as soon as you leave home, your Nest cameras are on and recording and monitoring. And as soon as you come home, it automatically turns off so that, you're not wasting energy and you're optimizing the camera for better feeds. And it also protects your privacy in case, somebody hacks into it or something. The camera is off because you're at home. So these are, some of the small scenarios, right, that showcases. And again, on the industrial side, the applications of this are far more advanced, far more different. So yeah, those are also there.
Yeah, we get bit by that bug every now and then. Whenever we take a road trip, our thermostats, they're the Nest thermostats, they'll detect that we're both away. So it'll put it into an eco-friendly mode. So during the summer, it has a high and low protection. So the house doesn't get too hot or too cold. But we'll go on a road trip. It'll be like 85 degrees inside the house. And we have to remember when we are like 6 hours away on our way back, to turn it off so the house will be nice and cool when we get home. Otherwise, it's just like blistering hot.
That is why I think, if developers, especially app developers, need to start paying attention to location and leverage the location services in a way that can enhance customers' experiences. It should not become an afterthought. It should become, a part and parcel of building your applications. And in fact, if you start thinking about location from the get-go, you really can do a lot of amazing things within almost any app, all the way from Chuck's podcast app to Nest to Amazon. A lot of it can add value to our lives.
I'm still waiting for someone to put together some sort of blend of maps and weather so that it says, this is going to be what your weather is like all along your trip. So for example, like I live on the East Coast, we drive through mountains, right? I want to know if it's snowing in the mountains when we're in the mountains. I don't care if it's snowing at our destination or at my house. That's what I want to know. But that's a harder thing to do. Yeah. We dream, right?
It's if you actually break down the complexity, what you need is, let's say you're driving in your car. Most of the cars today have 3G, at least 3G services, and they're constantly pinging. So all it needs is at least now that you mention, I have a car that shows there's a weather app on the screen, on the nav screen, and the weather app automatically keeps updating the weather as I'm driving through it. Because it shows the sun. It's close, but it doesn't warn me or anything. But it keeps updating wherever I am. So that's what it's doing, And again, we have a weather API which does exactly that based on your location, and it could be streaming or it could be a static one.
Oh yeah, if someone makes that app, you should let me know. I will buy it.
I think there's a new business idea there.
Yeah, because my wife does the same thing. Like when we're driving down to her parents' houses. They both live in the same town. It's like 2 hours away. And she checks like 3 weather stations, before we leave. And I love that idea where essentially it's, well, you're going to be in the vicinity of this weather station in an hour, right? So the weather there should look like this.
Yep.
So much to do, and so many. Like I said, it's literally the opportunity for developers right now. I really think it's a golden age for developers. If you think about it, your hardware or infrastructure needs have literally been democratized. Most of the data that you need is available in the form of services. Programming languages have become so easy from when, I started coding in, somewhere in the mid-90s. And compared to today, it's a breeze to build an application or, even develop a solution or anything. It really, just limited by developers' imagination right now on what they can do and how they can do it. But literally, you could conquer a lot.
So I have one more question, and that is, how do you test location-based apps, right? Because I'm doing this work, I'm sitting at my desk, it's running on my machine, and I want to test, what does this look like if I drop the app somewhere in the middle of Kansas, right? And I tell it to map to Washington, D.C., or tell the car to drive to Washington, D.C., I want to see what decisions it's making as it kind of ghosts its way across. Is there a good way to do that?
You could spoof location, and you could get, there are ways to do that. And again, I think you gave, we are also on Twitch, twitch.tv/HereDev. And I think you gave me a really good idea for my next sort of podcast with some of my engineers. I think do that.
Yeah, because I can just see, right? I tell it, okay, well, just use my current location, or even if I drop it on my phone, I'm still sitting in my office, and I'm not going to go walk around with it because I can't debug it. So, that kind of thing would be handy. It's like, okay, how do I fiddle with this?
I was just going to ask, kind of in addition to that, are there tools that make spoofing easier, or do you provide any kind of thing, or mocking? However, to me, it seems basically an equivalent to a kind of mocking.
So we have an Android SDK and iOS SDK, and within those, you have the ability to do that. Again, I can get more details on that and probably follow up even on a blog post or something. So,
yep,
that's cool.
Anything else we should cover before we do picks?
The only other thing I'd say is, look, how is location impacting the public sector, right? The governments, or how is mobility services affecting or shaping the future of, or I should say, how is mobility services affecting the future of mobility in cities, in modern cities, smart cities, so on and so forth.
When you talk about mobility, how is that different from location?
See, mobility is sort of the overarching term for all of location. Location is a subset of that mobility, right? Mobility is services, your public transit, your all of those come into
traffic
your
flow,
your road congestion, your utilization of infrastructure, public transportation utilization. All of that becomes sort of urban mobility, so to speak.
Well, I think that we're going to have a huge shift in our technology when jetpacks and flying cars become a thing.
Yes, but in fact, one of the countries that we work with, United Arab Emirates, particularly Dubai, is so far into these self-driving cars and automated cabs. They're literally at the forefront of adopting all of these futuristic mobility services, including flying taxis, flying robo taxis, so on and so forth. There's a big change that is going on in the world of urban mobility. Especially with driverless cars coming into picture, where I really think it's the future. In our lifetimes, we'll see the fundamental shift happening from people buying cars to people subscribing to a car service. Because if you think about our cars, 80% of the time, 85% of the time, they sit in a garage, they sit idle. We don't get full utilization of these cars. So I think there is a fundamental shift waiting to happen. And again, once that self-driving technology kicks in, or the autonomous world kicks in, it fundamentally changes the way we move. A lot of smart cities and urban planners are already thinking about that, and we are working with quite a few cities and governments to help make that reality happen.
I can't wait till I can do a Star Wars movie marathon, get half of it done, go do business in Los Angeles, and then watch the other half on the way back.
Be careful what you wish for. It might be just around the corner.
I know, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. I'd love to talk to somebody who's designing some of that self-driving car technology, but that's another show.
I mean, maybe you could get Elon. That would be an exciting
show. Elon and I are like brothers.
Yeah.
In other words, we act like we don't know each other.
You'll need a joint or two on your podcast then.
I'm not quite sure where we want to go with this next. I mean, for one thing, if everybody knows where I am, I mean, that could be scary for some people. And for other people, it's just generally a convenience factor, which is kind of what you're talking about. The other angle on this that I want to hit is, and I don't know which we'll hit first. So as a developer, how do I think about location services and things like that I'm building? And how do I integrate it into my app? Most Ruby developers are going to be web developers. So how does it affect things there? And then, if I move over to Ruby Motion or I build a mobile app to it, how do I handle all that stuff too?
Great question. So, let's start with the first question, because that is always on top of mind, right? Like privacy. Privacy is a big issue and very important thing for all consumers. And we at Here, I want to say this out front, is we are a privacy first company. What privacy first means is we don't by default opt you in. By default, we opt you out of all of our services. And in our app, if you've used Here We Go, and the new Here We Go that we are building will also be based on that fundamental piece. And with privacy in mind, there are multiple ways, and there are multiple companies, both small and large, that are using this for a different way. There's been a lot of furor in the market right now, or in the general public perception that you're being tracked all the time. The point is, you are one of the billion or 1.5 billion devices that is being tracked, right? So you're the needle in the haystack, and nobody's looking for the needle. We just want to know, you can draw insights on the haystack, and that is what is happening. Your simple traffic service that you get from your smartphone, right? This is because, the masses have opted in, or by default in a few ecosystems, opt you in, and the whole data is anonymized and then, leveraged as a service and exposed so that everybody can benefit out of it. If somebody had a malicious intent, could they get to the bottom of it and figure out where Charles is? I think there is, but that goes to, with anything, right? Like your Windows device, your anything that you put on the cloud. I think if somebody had started off with malicious intent, yes, of course, you could absolutely pinpoint. If you think about it, pretty much all of our lives are online right now, right? From our banking to our home address to our work documents, everything is residing somewhere on the cloud. So if people had a malicious intent, I'm sure they could do way more harm. But this anonymized concept of the group, the data of the group, and then exposing that as a service, I think there are a lot of benefits to that. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. But that being said, we respect privacy and we are a privacy first company, and we don't share data. Our business is not based on selling your data or anonymized data or anything. We are not in that business.
One of my concerns with geolocation history is being able to start to identify patterns of a particular user over time. And one instance that comes into mind with this is if you have an Android device and if you've ever used Google Maps on there, if you go to google.com/maps/timeline, then
Correct.
that's going to show you in history of where you've been. So if someone were to compromise the same account that you have your Google Android device signed in as, then they're going to be able to kind of track your movements over time to start to develop patterns, and that could potentially be used to harm an individual. So from that perspective, I think that there is actually a lack of consumer awareness that this is going on in the background, and that data just keeps getting aggregated more and more.
Yeah, Dave, you bring up a really, really good point. You're absolutely right that if a device or a company is collecting data, and over a time, you can easily build a pattern. I'm sure all of our lives are more or less the same or exciting because we wake up in the morning, go to work, drop kids, and in the evening pick them up and go back home. So it's very easy over a period of even 10, 20 days or even a month, to figure out where your work location is, where your home is, which school your kids go to, and a lot of inferences could be drawn and a pretty accurate model to be built around our lives. In between, if you go to the grocery store, I'm sure we are all creatures of habit. So we go maybe to the same grocery store that's close by to our place. So you know which grocery store you go. You get the point. And that is why I think it's really important for these companies to sort of come out and understand that you need to be privacy first, right? Like if you remember the big billboard that Apple put out at CES last year, it was this glaring, massive billboard that said what happens on an iPhone stays on an iPhone. That's a company that takes privacy seriously and keeps your data, to yourself, frankly, because it's your data. Apple's data, Apple's business model, nor our business model, nor a few other companies' business models are not built around your data, right? But this is different for Google, and I think if you talk to them, they'd probably say that, hey, we are giving everyone a heads up about what's happening, because when you click that EULA, we are somewhere in that 367 pages. We are capturing, a small bullet that says, hey, by the way, your location, you're opted in. If you want, you can opt out. Again, this has been the big bone of contention with the government and with Google of late. If you remember Sundar testifying, or for that matter, Mark Zuckerberg testifying with Congress. And I see that as a problem with a few of the large companies. And that brings up to another point that Charles was talking about. How can developers make use of this location services, right? This is the gap, right? This is where we can. There's a huge opportunity for innovation, where somebody can build an app, including us, that can think about users first and foremost, and allow you to capitalize your data and allow you to even monetize your data, because that is where the industry in general is headed. And all the data that you generate, think about it, you generate, your cars generate, your phones generate. There is so much data just a single person is generating that is valuable to all of these companies. Now, if you're able to leverage that own data for whatever reason, right, for value-added services, for even plain dollars or euros or rupees or wherever you're in the world, there's a monetization aspect that you could take there. And there are no marketplaces today that enable it. So this is the innovation that I see that could happen. But this all starts with the first concept that, it's privacy first. Your data belongs to you, and you should be in full control on where your data goes and how your data goes.
So to continue a little bit down this vein of privacy, but to kind of move a little farther along, how does here, right, since you're kind of here representing them, how do you guys deal with it, right? So for example, if I'm a developer and I'm leveraging your technologies, I'm therefore accessing data from other people, right? How are you dealing with that aspect? I assume that I, as a developer, can't just be like, well, I just want to get to Chuck's data and where he's gone or where Dave has gone, right?
Yeah.
I assume that all that's protected. I guess I was just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk through what do you guys do to protect against whatever this situation, other scenarios?
Yeah, like I said, we respect and enable privacy. Our business model, again, to emphasize, is not based on getting your data, and neither do we monetize nor do we use it in our services. But that being said, the application developers are using our services, and then the application there is a layer where we provide the backend, and then the application comes in, and let's say Yelp is using ours. I wouldn't take Yelp, but think about food delivery services company that is using our services. By default, they would be opting out. We would not be opting you in by default for sharing your data. But at the same time, food delivery services company would need to know where you are, so they could show you all the restaurants in and around you. At that point, we hand over to the application company or services company, and then they handle the privacy from there on.
Can I, as a, I guess we'll call them a bad actor here, right? Can I, as a developer that's being a bad actor, override your kind of default opted out choice and force everybody to be opted in? So if I'm creating a totally new app, can I basically just kind of be overriding that setting without letting my users know?
Yeah, I think that is possible to possible to do.
So that's fair. It's a danger. It's not your responsibility, but yeah.
Yeah, but that is the case with everything, Chuck. I mean, you think about it, right? Can you use a car to go from point A to point B? Absolutely. Can you use a car to sort of, if you had bad intentions, you could do a lot of damage with the car. That could also happen.
Totally answers my question.
And then you have companies like Facebook. This was just released where even if you opt out of their tracking, they're still tracking you. And I think they just got in some big trouble for that. I haven't been following this story, but it's out there. So what can someone do other than putting their phone into airplane mode to protect themselves?
I just want to address John's point here for a second before you answer that question. And that is that if you're building an app that uses here, you're giving the information to the app, and then the app is handing it off to here, right? And so from that point, from using the services provided by here or some other service, geolocation service, that's all private, but you can hand it off to, some other actor, send it off to some other service that isn't secure. So I think that's where you could see that information get hijacked.
Yeah, I'm assuming from both your answer to us, Mithun, what you just said, Charles, and just my basic understanding of it, the deal here is that in order for somebody to act maliciously, they would have to write an app that, like you just pointed out, Chuck. I would have to then send that data off somewhere else and maliciously use it in some way.
Or not properly protect it before it goes to a service like here. Anyway, go ahead and answer Dave's question.
Sorry, Dave, can you repeat your question again?
So how does a consumer protect themselves without having to go so paranoid and putting their phone in airplane mode?
Even if you put your phone on airplane mode, at that point your phone is pretty much not usable, right? That's a tricky question, Dave. That's the $1 million question. If you want to use your phone, I think the phone needs to know which cell tower to use. Based on that cell tower, the signals jump. So once you start peeling those layers, I think if you really want to know where Dave is, let's say you're driving down the interstate. I live in Seattle, so if I'm driving down 520, there's a handoff that happens between a cell tower at the beginning of 520 to the end of 520, where it is downtown Seattle, then probably Bellevue, which is on the other end of the bridge. And then from Bellevue, as I keep going, the handoff happens. So it's a you could start tracking if you need to. But this is always the give and take of technology, right? Like, you use technology for a good purpose. You can stay connected anywhere with anyone at any time. Otherwise, you want to go completely off the grid, you can, but you lose the advantages of technology. But at the same time, I think a happy balance comes into picture where your regulation kicks in, right? Like that's where GDPR and the likes of it come to ensure that your people are protected, so nobody is tracking where Dave is going, and it's all anonymized. But you're still getting the benefit of the technology and the advancements in the technology. And at the same time, people figure out a different way to monetize. In this case, people are monetizing not based on your location, but based on the usage of the telecom service that you're paying a monthly bill on. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah. One thing that I do is to limit what I actually install on my phone. So I really only keep the apps on my phone that I'm actively using. Things that, like, for example, the Facebook thing. I don't even keep Facebook installed on my phone. If I want to connect with some friends, then I'll actually get on my computer and then log on to Facebook. So, that solves a couple of issues. One, around the geolocation worries, that fewer apps, that's a fewer surface area that could be attacked. And then also just not being on my phone all the time, to just reduce how much I'm actually on my phone, even though it's with me wherever I go.
Those are definitely good suggestions, and that would definitely help curb some activity. But at the same time, if you had a proper ethical company and you had more regulation that actually cared about protecting people than corporations, then I don't think we would have worried. We needed to worry that much. But that's a slippery slope, I think, right? So there's always a fine balance on what to do, where to do. Look, if I were to go far, you have Facebook installed or you use Facebook on your desktop computer. There are cookies that are tracking where you go. Let's say you went to Target, you purchased something on Target.com. That Target.com cookie, has the information about where you're getting it, what you purchased, where you went, the whole thing. From there, they could sort of build a mental model back on saying like, okay, Dave lives in Bellevue, Washington. Here's how, so on and so forth. All I'm saying is, look, if there is a bad actor with bad intentions, trust God, but lock your doors.
Hey, folks, this is Charles Max Wood, and I just launched my book, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. It's up on Amazon. We self-published it. I would love your support. If you want to go check it out, you can find it there, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. Have a good one. Max out. All right, well, let's go for some picks. Dave, do you have some picks?
Yeah, sure. So one is the Google Remote Desktop. It's an extension where you can set up your computers to remote desktop into them to remotely control. I was using TeamViewer before, but they've really just kind of irked me lately, saying that I'm using it for commercial purposes, but I'm really just trying to help my parents fix, their printer or whatever. So Google Remote Desktop has been a good alternative for me. And then I've been getting into 3D printing a lot more recently. And it's because the reason why I stopped is I was just getting horrible prints left and right for like a year. So I just kind of lost the motivation. But I recently switched to a different filament, which is the medium that it uses, from a company called Hatchbox. And Hatchbox, I've not gotten one failed print ever since using them. So a big shout out to their filaments. They are really, really cool.
Awesome. John, do you have some picks for us?
Yeah, I do. So my first one is a book called Never Split the Difference that I have been reading recently. More or less, it's for anyone who runs into situations in life where you might need to negotiate. And it's not so much that I'm being told how to negotiate so I'm not done with the book, but I feel like what he's telling me is this is what is going on in this negotiation, and here's how you would deal with the specific scenario, right? Or here are techniques that you can deal with. I feel like my ability to understand my own particular failings when I'm trying to navigate negotiations is growing greatly through this book. Anyway, I am thoroughly enjoying this nonfiction book, which is very odd for me because I don't read nonfiction.
Oh, I love that book.
It's awesome.
It's written by that FBI.
Chris Voss.
Yeah, Chris Voss, who was a crisis negotiator.
Yes.
And it's amazing.
Yeah, I met Chris Voss about 2 years ago. And then I said, I love your book. And he said, I'm not that Chris Voss. I thought it was, but it wasn't.
Did you go to lunch with him because you thought it was that Chris Voss?
No, he was doing some other stuff that I was interested in as well.
Okay.
But I was like, oh, your background's so interesting, and I really love this book. And he's like, yeah, that's not me. And I'm like, oh, so your background's different? Tell me about it.
Nice.
But yeah.
Nice. Okay. So, and then my second pick. So I've been on a couple different episodes before, and both times I've recommended a different scotch, and I have another one today as well. There's kind of like two kinds of scotch that you drink, right? You sort of have the one that's like a bit cheaper, but is good that you can have more often. And then you have your really expensive stuff that you only bring out when you have guests and things, right? It's tough to find like a good kind of value scotch, right? Those like cheaper ones that are really good. And I ran into this one totally on accident because the guy that gave me a recommendation, he gave me like 4 recommendations and I didn't like 3 of them. But this one was fantastic, not for the reasons he said. So it's called Kilkerran or whatever. It's a 12-year-old scotch. It's a super awesome value scotch. It comes in like between, it depends on where you get it, I guess, but I can find it online for like $40, right? $40, $50. You can get it at a store for like $60, which for like a single malt scotch is ridiculously good. So it's cheaper than your Macallan 12. It's really good. It like sits, it's definitely like, it's like a middling tier if I were to put the Macallan 12 at like a low tier, right? Which it's not, but whatever. So for people who might be into scotch or looking for a value scotch, I totally ran into this. It's amazing. Big fan.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't actually drink, so I'll just pretend you gave some awesome ice cream picks.
My wife has some of those.
Yeah.
She's into that.
Yeah, and ice cream's kind of the same way, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to go get the great value because I just want ice cream, or I'm going to go get like the what's better than Ben and Jerry's. Anyway.
We're into Bluebell. That's our
Bluebell.
That's our value staple, but really good, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Or go to a Cold Stone or something. Anyway, I'm going to jump in with a few picks. Couple of things. First of all, the audiobook for the Finding Your Dream Developer Job guide should be out soonish. I think I mentioned that at the beginning of the show. I really appreciate all the people reading it and, telling me what they liked and giving me feedback. Just absolutely love it. Another pick that I'm just going to throw out there is that we are still looking for 1 or 2 more people to join this show. So if you love Ruby Rogues, you've been wanting to be on the show, let me know. You can just email me, chuck@devchat.tv. I've been reaching out to a few people like John, but it's always nice to just kind of hear, oh, I wanted to be on the show, because then we can talk about it. And then one last pick, and this is a game. It's actually been picked on the show before. I think it was picked in episode 1 or 2, but I've been playing it a bunch with a bunch of my friends, and we've really been enjoying it. It's called Letters from Whitechapel. So one player plays Jack the Ripper, a serial killer, and everybody else plays the detectives trying to find him. The Jack the Ripper's objective is to get from the murder scene to the hideout without getting caught, all 4 rounds. And if he can do that, he wins. If he ever gets caught or can't make it to his hideout by the end of any given round, then he loses. And so the detective's job is to find him and arrest him. And the way they do that is they move around the board and they look for clues. And the Jack the Ripper character will just tell them if he's been in the location they checked. There's some setup and things like that it's a little more involved than all that, but it's a chase across London and it's a ton of fun.
Nice.
So I'm going to pick
the game
that.
Again?
It's called Letters from Whitechapel.
Letters from Whitechapel. Okay.
Yep. Our other staple is Shadowhunters, and that's kind of like Werewolf with a game board in front of you, and you have the opportunity, instead of voting for people you're going to eliminate, you have a hidden identity, and each identity has a special power that they have if they reveal who they are. But if you reveal who you are, then the opposing faction may come at you. It's a lot of fun too, and it plays in like 20 minutes to a half hour, even with like 7 or 8 people. Yeah, so you wind up attacking other players, and you move down the damage board, and when you get to your spot where you're out of damage, then you're dead. The whole point is for your faction to be the last one standing, unless you're a neutral, right? You're not part of the shadows or the hunters, in which case you have like some special criteria. So one of them's like the person on your left, it wins, then you win. Or, if you have these 3 equipment items, then you win, things like that. But it's a relatively simple game. I really, really enjoy it. So I'll pick that as well.
Very nice.
Mithun, do you have some picks for us?
I just finished this morning. I finished The Culture Code by Denise Coyle. I don't know if you guys have read that. Actually, it goes into, what makes high-performing teams really stand out and what gets them there. And it talks about the importance of building culture in a company and in a team and how it can be, how it can make all the difference from a low-performing team to a high-performing team, companies, what be it. I really enjoyed that book, so much so that as soon as I came to office this morning, I asked my admin to order, books for every one of my team members to read that. Culture Code by Denise Coyle. And I'm sort of a word nerd. I was looking at my phone. I recently installed through an ad, which I've never done, Puzzlescapes. I installed this. It's just like, a new way of making words you'll get a bunch of letters and you start making words and takes you from one level to another level. I'm a big junkie for that. So that's keeping me busy. And, my daughter who is 6, I got her into this and she's loving this as well. And it's also helping her sort of improve her vocabulary. So
nice. All right. If people want to find you online, Twitter, GitHub, etc., where do they go?
Absolutely. On Twitter, I'm at Mithun D, MITHUND. And on LinkedIn, it's Mithun Dhar, linkedin.com/in/MithunD. Yeah. And if they need to email me, mithun.dhar@here.com. And I'll give you all of these so you could post it up.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming and talking through this stuff with us.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you for having me, Chuck. And nice meeting you, Dave and John. Enjoyed speaking with you all.
Yeah, great.
Talk to you later.
Thanks.
All right. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.